Hello, everyone. I'm really excited about the interview you're about to watch with myself and Instructor Zulu from TikTok. He's one of America's great teachers. It's a great discussion. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of an audio issue when the streaming service downloaded the files. The timing was off, so it's not terrible, but there is a noticeable delay. Anyways, thank you for your understanding and enjoy the episode. Did you see this is the sign specific to you? I was thinking, I think we're here. Yeah, we're there. 84 called and said they wanted us to stop sullying their name by using it, explaining what's going on right now. Thank you everyone for tuning in to the Voice of Reasons broadcast, where we use philosophy, theology, and conspiracy to try and figure out what is going on with this thing we call reality. And I'm done hearing from the certified officials. I'm done hearing from the mainstream media, the official narrative. And so with this broadcast, we're going to bring on people who aren't necessarily accredited with the kind of endorsements that you would normally hear on a podcast like this. We're going to bring on people that have figured things out on their own, that have something specific to contribute in this information war. And I don't want to talk to the people who make the rules. I want to talk to the people who break the rules. And I've got one of those individuals today. My respect for this guy is growing every minute. And he's someone I found on TikTok, which if you haven't been on TikTok and you are a connoisseur of information, you got to get on there. It doesn't matter if you're 30, 40, 50. It started off kind of, high schoolers getting into trouble, whatever, which is kind of where any good thing starts with that. But it's changed to really important people getting a message out, and it crosses all genres. And if you can skip through initially, you're going to have to get through some kind of stuff you probably don't want to see. But what's great about it is you can not only get great information, but you can contribute. It's a two-way street, two-way information street. So it's great. And it brought the teacher that I have on today and myself together. And we're going to have a discussion about the education system, not only kind of the philosophy of it and what is going on, but he's got a very specific experience that needs to be heard. And I'm concerned that anybody that has something that needs to be heard is going to be deplatformed on TikTok in the near future. So we're going to get him on here and we're going to talk with him. His name is Ellis Reyes, and he goes by Instructor Zulu on TikTok. He's got over 25,000 followers, which is almost a full basketball game, like a professional basketball game crowd. So that's an impressive number. And what's great about it is he's not doing it by dancing. He's not doing it by
no, thank God.
That's not how it is. He's doing it by sharing wisdom. He's a very wise man, and he's got a great life experience, and there's a need for this. So you go through TikTok and there'll be someone who, whatever, standard thing, low hanging fruit. And then here comes Ellis, and you stop and you got to hear what this guy has to say. Hopefully he can kind of give us some insight as to not only what got him on TikTok, but what his plans are. So Mr. Zulu, teacher, professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here and to have a conversation with you today. We've got some really interesting things lined up, and I look forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, I do too. I'm going to try not to talk over you the whole time. We talked about that in the pre-discussion. But we just started talking about all the similarities that him and I have, and it's amazing. Obviously, you see the two of us. You don't see the same guy, but same Myers-Briggs, similar genetic composition, similar upbringing. And where we took a derivation is that we didn't talk about this, but formal education wasn't good for me. A high ADD guy, trauma at home. It didn't work for me. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't just sit in a chair and absorb the information. So I didn't pursue college, any higher learning. But you did. And that's kind of where I want to start with this, because that actually surprises me for us to be so similar, for me to basically repel that idea and walk away, and for you to embrace it and then become a storied, teacher yourself. Let's talk about how you got into education. And before I let you talk, and then hopefully I will let you talk.
Okay.
I watched you talk to your students in one of the live chats, and these people had so much respect for you, and they were hanging on every word. And that's the kind of teacher that we need out there. And so, when did you know you wanted to be a teacher? How did you become a teacher? Let me hear the whole thing.
Okay. I'll start with what you just ended with, and just say that I find it quite interesting that you would, first of all, notice that, because those kids are kids like you, who are not your mainstream kids, who are not, for the most part, the highly successful kids academically, but they gravitate to my classroom because I respect them. I find ways to interact with them, and I help them learn and feel like they are valued.
I could 100% see that. I could see that. I got that exact feeling that they weren't enjoying school with other teachers, and they could trust you, and they were asking you things about if they should wear a mask, if they should get a vaccine, big life decisions. And they trusted you. And I could see that you guys forged that relationship through that. That's awesome. Keep going.
Well, yeah. And also in our earlier conversation, as you know, I didn't give them a direct answer, yes, no. And I didn't go off on a anti-mask or anti-vaccine tirade. I want kids, and I want all people to be sound thinkers, And so I laid out a framework for them to think about it and make it the right decision for themselves based on their family's values, based on what they feel like their health concerns might be, because I think it is an individual decision, and people should have the freedom, particularly in our country, to make those determinations for themselves without the heavy hand of authority making them do something they don't want to do.
That is so refreshing. And I know that a lot of the education system doesn't echo that sentiment. That's not necessarily how they feel. Hey, let's equip these people with information and teach them how to think. It's kind of the inverse of that. So for you to, and I actually remember that now in the threads. Here are some of the concerns. Here's concerns that I have. Have you researched this? And my guess is that would cause a lot of consternation in your industry, having that kind of philosophical approach to teaching.
Yeah, and it can cause consternation amongst these kids' parents, because then the kids will go back and ask their parents those questions, right? Well, who taught you to, what brought you to this outcome? Why are you asking me this question? We're going to wear a mask. Well, I had a conversation with Mr. Reyes, and there we go. So yeah, that doesn't win me a ton of popularity contests often. So let me rephrase that. That doesn't win me popularity contests with certain types of parents.
Exactly. With the kids, though.
Right? There are certain parents, and there are certain parents who certainly appreciate my encouraging their kids to be contemplative and to be thoughtful and to ask meaningful questions. And those are parents who, have always been, who've always been fans of what I do and how I do it. So to revisit your question, how did I come to teaching? So teaching was not my initial career path, though everything that I did prior to coming to education formally had a teaching component. I always gravitated toward the sharing of information in one way or another. I was in the Army. I served in the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and found myself in teaching roles there, whether it's, working with new soldiers to help them learn weapon systems or, soldiering skills or whatever it is. I found myself in that arena. Or, when I was going to graduate school, I worked as a tutor all the time, helping students with various things. And I said, why not just do this for real? And so I got my master's degree in education and became a public school teacher. And even in that, I was really deliberate in the situations that I pursued with my career. So, for example, I knew that as a teacher, I wanted to teach and not do social work. And I don't mean that to say that I'm cruel, but there are people who have the heart for the social work component of teaching, right? And I wanted to be on the more academic side of things where I could teach kids to think. I could present them with rich content and then give them the tools with how to evaluate the rich content so they could be more thoughtful people as they move forward in their lives. Right. And I know that, and God bless the people who go to difficult schools and want to help kids in trying circumstances and spend 70% of their time, with the counselors and with child protective services and all of that, and do the best they can with the teaching piece. I don't know that would be my skill set.
Yeah, well,
so I've always gravitated toward, being on the more teacher side of things. Now, I have kids who are at risk, students who are at risk. I have students who are non-traditional learners, and I love working with them, and I'm really good at it. But I still lean toward the teaching side of things rather than sort of the social work side of things.
So, and I think that's the ENTP in you. What we do is we search out information and everywhere. We're totally consumed by getting all of the information we can. Then we put our deduction together, and then we want to tell people what we figured out. And so it makes sense that you would want to. Teachers, actually, I think one of the careers they tell you to take is an ENTP. So it wasn't that you came in and said, I want to change lives. I'm going to do this. You were a connoisseur of information. You wanted to teach people information, your passion for it. But on the road to this, I think you picked up another anointing or another, calling, which was these kids need help, and you were the male figure in their life, that had the success with your service, and you were put into a place of mentorship, probably not necessarily your intentions, but I think that if you were teaching my kid and you had resigned or whatever, we'll get to that. I would have been devastated to lose you over, teaching my child kind of thing. And we need more teachers like you, right? We need you. If we had an army of you with the right kind of preparation and the right intention with teaching kids, I'd put my kid in school right now. We're homeschooling him. But instead of you being embraced and, us trying to find more like you, that's not what happened with your situation. Can we talk about what you're doing now? And I think that I want to get into the video, but the conversation we had about you resigning, to me, sheds light on what being the kind of teacher you are results in 2021.
Sure. Thank you. So I am a person who tends to be extremely transparent. We talked earlier, I'm like Popeye. I am what I am, right? And you're going to like me or not like me, warts and all. And I don't shy away from what I view as the truth. And I just lay it out there for my students and for my families and for my colleagues. And, I respect them enough to allow them to do with it what they will. And so, unbeknownst to me, for a while, there's a group of people in the community where I used to live who were collecting my social media posts on my personal blog, on Facebook, on Twitter, and essentially creating a dossier, like the East German police. And once COVID hit and I joined TikTok, they had video, right? And so they could, download my video clips and spin them with their personal political agenda. And then ultimately I made a blog post in mid-February where as a result of a lot of the professional development that teachers are being compelled to do, not just in my district, but across the country, a lot of the content that's being force-fed to kids, the critical race theory content, I said that in my blog post that teachers, well-meaning teachers, need to start, standing up to this. We need to push back. We need to stop being quiet and stand our ground and fight back against this because it's not okay. This is an ideological takeover of academia, and we shouldn't let it happen. And that two-word phrase, fight back, was interpreted as being a threat to my students, to my colleagues, to my school community. And with this package of information that they had collected over the course of time, they presented that to my district's HR department, and that launched an investigation of me. I was put on administrative leave, and the district began this investigation of all my social media and of me and of my life and all of that to see if I was a threat. Do I have a manifesto posted somewhere? All of that, kind of thing.
I intentionally went to that before we talked about your worldview and, your calling card, what your mission statement is. Because if somebody was listening to this and they didn't know what you were representing, and you were a very liberal, very left, you were teaching, like your intention was to get rid of, teaching about gender or pronouns or these kinds of things. And you were, that's what you were saying. We need to fight for everybody's right to choose. We need to fight for, there's no way that you would have suffered what you suffered, because what ended up coming of this is you were trying to defend personal liberty. You were trying to defend more of a conservative mindset, and the left basically got rid of you. Now, I know we'll talk about you resigning, but basically it was a power move by them, because in the court of public opinion, all they had to do was say things like, they didn't perceive what you said as a threat. They used it as a justification because the Capitol storming had just happened. And it was just, he said the words fight. Right. Now we can get this guy who's, not on board with what we want to do. We can get him out of here. We can, get this guy away from what we're trying to do. And the irony is that you were basically saying, we've got to fight, because if we don't fight, we're not going to be able to fight. They're going to get rid of us. They're going to fire us. They're going to replace us. They're going to whatever. We have to fight while we can. And that's what they use to, basically deplatform you from fighting.
Right. Well, and also one of the things that's most important to me is freedom of thought and freedom of discussion. And that is being directly eliminated in public schools, where you have to conform to the ideology that's being presented. Otherwise, you are, and it's so hypocritical. And that the big mantra now is diversity, equity, and inclusion. No. But diversity, equity, and inclusion only includes people who agree with them.
As long as you agree with them. Yep. 100%. Yeah. Right. Try and be a male Christian, a white male Christian, and say, that you want to be respected for who you are. I mean, it just doesn't. I got deplatformed on YouTube for kind of part of that same thing, which was just, you can't speak sense. You can't say things like, let's be inclusive for everybody, for every religion, for every whatever. It's this one specific thing that you need to be include. You need to agree with. It's not be inclusive. It's agree with what they're saying, and that's
well, and that gets to the whole idea of the difference between being non-racist and anti-racist. If you are not a verbal advocate of their point of view, then you're not enough, right? You're not doing what you need to do to advance the agenda, right? And there's a lot of anti-racist training going on for teachers in public schools now, where they're being leveraged to get on board with it, or they are marginalized, by their colleagues, by their communities, completely. And going back to my students, which are really the most important thing, is that my classroom was a haven for kids, who thought differently, who learned differently, right? And I didn't go out and recruit them. They found me because their friends would tell them, hey, let's go have lunch in Reyes's class, because he doesn't impose stuff on us, and we can talk, freely and not without being judged.
There's not a single cell in my body that would want to say that CNN doesn't deserve a platform. And I'm not political. When I say CNN, obviously it makes it look like I'm a Trump guy or whatever. But if they said, we think communism is the way, we think socialism is the way, if somebody had a podcast that said, we don't think that there is such a thing as gender in any level, and great, it's America.
Let them have
Sweet. That's cool that you think that. I disagree, which is cool, which is fine as well. But I'm not going to say you shouldn't do it. And that's just like, that's where we've gone from, hypersensitivity and the idea of trying to be really careful with what we say, to that birthing it being okay to stopping people from saying what they want to say, because we taught everybody that the biggest sin you can make is to not say the wrong thing, the insensitive thing. I forget what that term was, but whatever you say, the saying that society goes, that guy's the problem. And we took that to, now we can stop that person from saying anything. And it was incremental. It was this like process of, oh my God, they said this, they said the R word, they said this word, they said this word. And so we're also sensitive, which is we got to make sure we say the right things. I'm not for saying stupid things, but that mutated into this, we got to shut this guy's channel down. We got to shut this guy's channel down. We got to get this guy out of here as a teacher. And as a conspiracy theorist, I would say that it wasn't an accident. I mean, there's two ways to really look at this. One is that this just, like I said, mutated. It's actually the good word. It's evolution. It's adapting. It's unguided. And the other is that this was intentional, and it was, showing people, normalizing and incrementalizing this kind of thought process, where if you would have said 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago to people what's going on, almost every person in America would have said never. That'll never happen in this country. Would never happen. It's
ridiculous.
So they had to make all these slight concessions and edge us up to this area. And then now if a teacher says, I'm concerned where this is going, I think we're all the same. This is a safe haven. We're all person. We're all human. There's no reason to do the things that you're doing. Let's get this guy out of here. And that's what happened.
Yeah, that's now controversial.
It's a tragedy. It's not okay. And it speaks to the bigger issue, I think, with the education system. I feel like this avalanche, this snowball is never it's not going to slow down. It's just going to continue to get bigger. And, you end up in a really dark place. The video that you made that metaphorically lit my head on fire. I was so mad when I watched this video. The title was "The Educrats Are Coming for Home and Private Schools." I actually have the TikTok video. Let me pull it up real quick.
Okay.
All right. So this is Instructor Zulu's video on. It's just it wasn't leaked. It was a publication that you had seen, I believe.
Right. Yeah. An article that I had seen online.
Hey, everybody. Families are taking their kids out of public schools in droves and homeschooling or sending them to private schools. And this scares the crap out of the education establishment. And now they're trying to take legislative action to exercise further controls over what happens outside of the public school system. Check this out. This is from libertarian-leaning online publication Reason Magazine, and it was published on March 17th, so Wednesday. And the headline is, "The education establishment fears you might teach your kids unapproved ideas." From the text, a very large proportion of homeschooling parents are ideologically committed to isolating their children from the majority culture and indoctrinating them in views and values that are in serious conflict with that culture.
All right.
Sorry.
That's my enemy. That is my enemy. Like I said, we're homeschooling my son, and I want my son to be able to go be with other children and learn about science and learn math and learn how to read and write and play and have their hands in the soil and have this experience, this innocent experience that children should be able to have. I want that. And if I could, I would I'd send him there 6 days a week, and he could take Sabbath off with us. He could just rest with us on Saturday. But we're so far from that for you to post this, let me read this quote again. "The education establishment fears you might teach your kids unapproved ideas." Okay, this is
How scary is that? I mean, that sounds straight from the Soviet Union to me. As an old Cold War guy.
It's
right?
Communist China. It's Soviet Russia. It's
diabolical.
I'm still reeling from even reading that again. So whether you believe in evolution or intelligent design, how every species on Earth exists is the male and the female find each other, take a liking to each other. The male shows himself as physically able. The female shows herself as able to, like physically, she's able to, we don't think about this, but reproduce. They do it. They do the reproduction. Yep. The child is born. Now this kid, what doesn't matter if it's an actual kid, like a goat, that's their kid, or a kitten, or the bear, whatever, is now at arm's length from the parent until it's able to fend for itself. This is how it works. We have bears. I'm in northern Maine, and you see the mom and you see the cubs, and if you went after the cub, the mom would get you, because the mom isn't going to trust that somebody's not coming for their cubs. And so you keep them at arm's length, literally or proverbially, until they're able to fend for themselves. What would that be? Teenager, 12, 16, 18, something like that, hold a fight, that kind of thing. We went from this, which is how humankind existed for thousands of years, to what we're in now so quickly. From the scale of the human story, it's unbelievable. There was, if I've done my research correctly, 100 years ago or whatever, however many years ago, when the state came in and said your kids have to be publicly educated, there were people that fought that. They said, well, no, we're going to teach our kids because we're farmers, we're tradesmen, we're tradesmen. We've made it this far. We're able to get to an adult age and reproduce. Therefore, we actually have the qualifications to do the same for our child. We don't want them going in and learning some unapproved idea, right? That's what they thought. And there was protests, and it was a fight. And whatever it is, 50 years, 100 years later, we're exactly in the inverse situation of that, where if you go, you know what, I'm going to teach my kids. Everybody goes, you can't teach your kids. How can you teach? You're not qualified to teach. You're not qualified, right? Like that's where we're at. So that's unbelievable. And for the education, I mean, to me, this shows exactly the point of the education system and where philosophically they're at. The education establishment fears that you might teach your kid unapproved ideas. Unapproved for who? Okay, because if I'm Christian and if I'm Buddhist, if I'm whatever, and I want to teach my kid that's the approved idea for me. So by you saying that I'm going to teach them an unapproved idea, you're almost venturing into religion, like a state worship, like a state religious worship. It's an ideology. You will believe what we say, you will do what we say, and you can't ask any questions. And now, because kids are at home, like probably the only good thing to come of the coronavirus is that parents and children are spending time together, and parents are finding out like, wow, I'm capable. I'm an adult and I can teach my kids some of these things. And there's a lot of parents that don't want to send their kids straight back into this. They're like, wow, I actually like my kid. I didn't know him. Like, this is weird. Yep. Wow, I can have a child and it's like a part of my experience and I can teach them. There's things I've learned and we can like enjoy each other. This is crazy. What a novel concept. So that's happening on one end. And now the educrats, which I love that term, is saying that we're afraid you're going to teach your kids unapproved ideas. And it's just, get them in here now. We're going to lose them. Get them in here. We got to get them indoctrinated. And it's everything that's wrong with this education system.
Well, and I appreciate the fact that you brought up the idea of religion, because the education establishment believes in secular humanism, right? And they advance secular humanism, very quietly, and it's never called into the religious context. Absolutely, it's 100% intentionally. But it is a belief system with, and then they try to moor it with pseudoscience and then justify it as saying, oh, it is completely objective and it is, sterile of any, for lack of a better phrase, religious contamination.
Like sterile from religious contamination. Yeah, it's proven, settled science. You can't question it. We figured this out. Meanwhile, the theory was derived 160 years ago. And how many other theories from 160 years ago do we dogmatically hold to and can't question? Right? Like there's a lot of things that we've learned since then. Like why? And I'm not a let's teach religion. I'm a religious. I don't know if we talked about this. I don't go to church. I consider myself a Christian in that I believe in the authenticity of the scripture. And I believe that the Old Testament, the Genesis account is accurate. I believe in the flood and all of that. And I believe that Yeshua died for our sins and rose from the dead. So, and I believe that when Jesus was on the earth, he was in opposition to the religious right. He wasn't here mad at sinners. He was forgiving and healing sinners, and he was mad at the religious right. So I'm with Jesus on being mad at the religious right. I'm not a religious individual. And I don't think that we should teach the Genesis account in school. Well, first off, I'm getting to the point that I don't think we should even have school anymore. Like, I'm ready to just blow the whole, no, I guess I can't say that, but like start metaphorically blow the whole thing up, like, and start over. That's what I meant to say, but that's funny. We talked about Columbine earlier. I got to be careful with what I say. So I think that if you are going to have school and you're going to have classical education, I don't think we should teach that the Genesis account is found in science. I don't think we should teach that evolution is found in science. I rather am entertaining the idea that we're in a video game, a simulation. Elon Musk brought it up. I think there's science that supports it, quantum physics, theoretical physics. Here's what we know. This reality is more complicated than we were taught that it was. Philosophical materialism doesn't work. Secular humanism doesn't work. These things are where we don't know what the answer is. Science needs to really delineate and go, okay, we know how this works. This is how it works. We don't know how it happened, so we're not going to even speculate. And if we do, we're going to call it something else. Speculation class, or I don't know what we call it, religion, theology, whatever you would want it. Hypothesis class. Yeah.
Hypothesis
Here's
class.
what we know. 10,000 years ago, all around the earth at the same time, everybody started reading and writing. We don't know how that happened, really, because there was no record before that. Here's what we also know. There's a genetic character named mitochondrial Eve, who was the first woman. She was the first proto-human, and every woman on the earth is related to her. There was an woman, the first human woman. We know that happened. The data says it happened this many years ago. We're not sure because, again, without reading and writing, I mean, carbon dating is so subjective. All of that information, it's so much more subjective. Data is so much more manipulatable and interpretable than you are taught that it is. And what happens is you take, doesn't matter if you're a Christian or an atheist, once you galvanize your worldview by whatever occurrences happen in your life to get to that point, you spend the rest of your life grabbing information to support your confirmation bias. And that's fine. That's how it's threat and non-threat. It's how you survive. Yep. It's fine. But when it goes from how we know it works to what we believe, science intentionally is calling what we believe science. They're calling it their founded science, settled science. Right.
And this gets into the squishy thing that you often hear politically. Oh, that's your truth and that's my truth. Right. Where they try to minimize a pure objective truth, which is inalterable. And that troubles me greatly because that undermines thinking, right? Because science should stick, and I agree with you that science, I think its place is to look at and examine those things that are provable empirically. And I think that's the domain of science. And then everything beyond that, I think a relabeling is great. Call it hypothesis class and throw everything in there and let people entertain it I don't mean entertain superficially, but think about it. So from that paradigm, this is one way of explaining that phenomenon, but there are others.
Number one, it's not a bad thing to say you don't know.
Right. And science is, the egos of science are loath to do that.
Lie, they're going to tell it to you as though they know it from a position of authority. And that's part of the indoctrination boot camp process that teachers have to go through. Is at one point, and doctors are guilty of this too, they cross this Rubicon into I'm learning to I know, right? And once they cross that, as the guy with the lab coat, you can't question them. They're like these demigods, and you just can't question them. And you lose the ability to do actual science when you lose the ability to be a rigorous, skeptical, thinking person. Science is about, if you read the scientific method, the theory of evolution obviously does not comply with this. And what it is that
doesn't play out.
You say, I've got this idea, you try the thing, and if the data it doesn't conclusively prove it, you have to go, well, you know what? Maybe I was wrong. I was maybe wrong. I don't know.
Or it demands further exploration or something.
Not to gaslight my guest, but he's an adherent to science, an atheist guy, and he said, the difference between science and religion is religion when it's empirical. You can't question it. You can't say you're wrong. They just believe it dogmatically. And I said, you don't think science does the same thing? He says, no, when we get new information, we reinterpret it. And I said, what do you think about soft tissue in dinosaur bones? And he goes, That's not a thing. And I go, you got Google right there, Google it. And I just watched him processing it. And I said, does the information say, maybe we got it wrong, this is really confusing? Or is everything a spin piece on how we can explain this? Like they literally go, we don't care that the fact says that you can't have organic material last this long. We got to figure out how to fit it into our paradigm. That's why science is not, this isn't science anymore. What we're talking about isn't science. It's religion.
Right.
It's as evident as you could possibly conceive of when you see it. But in the grounds of your industry, you would be a pariah or an outcast. If you had this discussion, if you were the science teacher, if you were the biology teacher, you would be fired.
Yes.
Yep.
Or you would be marginalized to the point that you would get no support from your colleagues. You would get no resources from your district. You know, you would just be out on an island fending for yourself and cut off from all existence. And they would send every problematic kid in the world your way.
And that's just if they tolerated you enough to even stay in there. And the people know this going into it. And if somehow you're able to fight through the layers of indoctrination that you've been forced to believe, and you're able to think critically, and you're able to go, well, maybe they're wrong and I want to explore other options. If somehow, like, let's say in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, you have this revelation, you start doing it and you start actually thinking about teaching this, learning this, whatever, you will have no resources. You will have no support. You literally can't do it. So what you have now is this Ouroboros, this snake eating its own tail situation where it can't progress. It's just stuck in its own feedback loop of, I hate to say ignorance. Just scientists are ignorant prostitutes. That's where I went with that. I didn't mean to, but it's a scenario where you're defying knowledge and wisdom and finding things out. That's why I say in this, I want to pursue whatever this thing is that we call reality. And you can't come up with a solution because you've got the wrong formula. You've excommunicated the idea of an intelligent design, even if it makes sense that there's a designer, and not talking about religion, like whatever, call it an alien, call it a computer simulation, whatever, about the idea that potentially something does. If you forfeit that idea so empirically, so finally, it's such a finite decision that you cannot entertain the idea of entertaining. And if there is an intelligent designer, you'll never get the right answer. So you've got science just doing this thing, this massaging each other's ego, not actually finding out the answers of this of this thing. I want to play this clip really quick. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's about the Dover High School that put the preface in their biology book. Do you remember that at all? And it caused so if for my viewers who haven't seen this.
Yes. Yep.
Today, the small town of Dover in southeastern Pennsylvania looks peaceful. But in 2004, it became the battleground for a bitter conflict that attracted attention from around the world. The conflict arose after the Dover Area School District required the reading of a short statement about evolution in high school biology classes. The statement told students that Darwin's theory had gaps and continues to be tested as new evidence is discovered. It further announced that there was a view that differed from Darwin's theory called intelligent design, and if students wanted to learn more about it, they could read a book that had been placed in the school library. The statement concluded by encouraging students to keep an open mind when it came to any scientific theory. On its face, the Dover statement did not seem to be the stuff that epic battles are made of. Supporters of Darwin's theory, however, were furious. They insisted that reading the statement was...
It ends up the ACLU gets involved to get this thing out of there. And if you've seen it, there's these guys that doing the press conference and they're filled with passion and they go, you will not teach religion and you will, and it's unbelievable.
And it's completely innocuous. All they're doing, and that is where science has become non-science, because science, when done with integrity, demands ongoing exploration. Right? Essentially, you should continue to test gravity, because what if we've been wrong?
If you're an actual scientist,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, wouldn't you want to be the guy? I mean, wouldn't that be exciting to say, hey, dude, I've just proven gravity?
On my TikTok, as you can imagine, with the content that I'm making, people are really fired. I've got one guy that follows me to troll me, which is funny. And he's actually a Christian scientist, and he's really mad that I say the priests of the religion of science. And we have to go back and forth constantly. But I said to him the other day, I said that, look, man, you're a great scientist. And, you obviously respect the official narrative and you're operating in that. But just think about this. Those that can't do, teach, and those that teach the things that those that questioned the official story discovered. It's no more simple than that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to teach what whoever
Right.
figures out, great. Then in 100 years, you'll teach the thing that we figured out. But if you want to figure something out, you're not going to figure it out by dogmatically following this flawed system. And look, we may have evolved. I'll finish on this. I don't know. I don't believe that personally. I think that the idea of the chicken egg assembly line, I was showing my son how because we have chickens, but we don't have a rooster. So they lay eggs every day. And it's amazing. They run around our yard and eat all the bugs and then basically 3D print an egg. It's a miracle every time. It's unbelievable. It's what they do. So I'm like, well, obviously I love that 3D printer in there. Somebody has to know how this is happening. If you just research what happens, it goes through these different stages in what they call the assembly line. And it, the shell here and the yolk here. And then if the rooster's involved and the semen's in this one chamber and it goes up the thing and it goes through this assembly line. And this had to happen, Ellis, the first time for there to be a chicken. You can't have this. It's called irreducible complexity. Yeah. You can't have a chicken if it didn't come from somewhere. And this process, like if you want to think it was reproducing through some other way and then mutated that assembly line, and that's what you want to believe, that's fine. But you're not going to prove it scientifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that.
And so
inevitable gap.
Goes, well, you can't invoke God there. Like Dawkins will say that you can't invoke God there, God of the gaps. Cool. That's fine. You can't invoke evolution. Can we get back to business now?
Yeah.
Well, whatever. We can do this all day. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's be fair.
Yeah. Let's be fair about it.
My God, I said this to that guy the other day. He says, evolution is a proven fact and you just have to deal with it. And we evolved, blah, blah, blah. And I said, Genesis is a proven fact and God made Adam in the garden and you have to deal with it. And he goes, right, you can't do that. I'm like, you can't do that. We're not going to get anywhere. So it's whatever. It's worldviews. And what's frustrating to me, and I'll try and wrap up on this, this point on this idea. What percentage of the people in the world that believe it because they were indoctrinated with this information in school? You went to school.
Oh, yeah.
Because you thought you needed your parents were like, well, we got to do what everybody else does and send the kid to school. And plus the dollar's been devalued and women's lib. And so now the mom and the dad don't raise the kids. So you send the kids to the school, and then the new parents is the actual school system. And they go to school and the kid thinks that the person that they're learning from knows because this person's taller and they have a nice suit. And the mom and dad said, you got to listen to this guy, whatever. He's the teacher. You got to believe this guy. And the kid believes that the person knows that they know. This person that's telling me this, that's saying we know this, and you're filling it out on your piece of paper when 300 million years ago, 200 million, whatever, you're filling this out and you're taking it as fact because you don't know better. And you think the person telling you has that information. And what a sin and a tragedy to an beautiful young mind to lie to them about anything. I don't care if it's evolution, if it's critical race theory, if it's whatever. You're this malleable thing and you're lied to and you believe it because at that point in your life, have you ever researched the geneticist, Bruce Lipton is his name? Bruce Lipton. He's the guy that came up with epigenetics. Bruce Lipton is basically, I don't know, it's proven scientifically I shouldn't say that in this conversation, but is using science to back the idea that the human consciousness is almost entirely formed by the age of 7. And so before the age of 7, your brain is in a wavelength it's the same wavelength that you're in if you're ever hypnotized. It's a way that the brain operates for the subconscious to be written. So if the subconscious is hardened, can't write on it. If it's in this malleable state, it can be written. And so children live in that state till the age of 7, which is why they play and pretend. And my son goes, Dad, I'm flying and I'm gonna, and I'm like, obviously he's not flying, but in his mind, he potentially is because his brain is functioning different than mine. So one of the sad tragedies of this whole thing is that these kids are in this subconscious writing malleable state, and we're forced to put him in as early as possible, like pre-education now, pre-kindergarten, pre-whatever. So by the time they're in 2nd, 3rd grade, they've been doing this for 3 or 4 years already, and a lot of their subconscious has been written. Their worldview has been cemented. Like, why can't we put the kids in school at 8 years old? Like, why do we have to get them in at 5? Because they're building
Right.
a certain thing. There's a certain child, a certain, potential future human. They're building this and for a specific purpose, in my opinion.
It's interesting that you bring up the age of 8 specifically, because I went to school long enough ago, my teaching program anyway, that age was the age at which early researchers believed that reading should begin to be taught, at 8. Right. Yeah. And it's only because of a lot of, economic, people think that if they wait to teach their kids how to read and how to do a bunch of these academic tasks until
Behind
8,
on what
they're going to be
trajectory,
developmentally behind or something. That's exactly right. And that's the question that they're loath to ask, because it's all about academic acceleration in a lot of schools these days, right? Oh, my kid is, it's a great cocktail party conversation. Oh, my daughter's 3 years ahead in reading and 2 years ahead in math, right? 2 years ahead of what, right? But in many cultures, they don't begin with any of that teaching until exactly the age of 8. And somehow they knew organically that was the age at which
somehow
to begin introducing that type of
through the oral tradition
thinking.
They had observed this phenomenon or this real process for thousands of years. This is one of the great tragedies that's happened. Do you remember the movie Men in Black?
That's correct.
Remember they had that pulse gun and they make whatever. We're all suffering from amnesia. Yep. I'm working on a documentary called Amnesiac, and what's happened is the human story doesn't really particularly change at the individual level. Like we're ENTPs. You can quantify our personalities, all of our crazy life events in 4 letters, and other ENTPs are going to be similar. And
letters.
All of humankind is this combination of these 4 letters, which I think is the same way genetics works, if I'm not mistaken. But whatever, it's 4 potential variables, and what the configuration is. It makes all of humanity now and forever. And so, how foods work in the body, the digestion being important, when you teach a kid, how you teach a kid, getting sunlight. These are things that we've learned through trial and error. And when our ancestors learned the thing and taught the child the thing, it was from a place of having seen it work, right? They didn't need to know how, it just did, right? Sun was good for you. It was good for you. It turns out it's not good for you to sit inside your entire life. Like, it's good to get out and get the sun. And they knew that. And if you talk to like 70-year-old, 80-year-old person, they'll say, how's your digestion? It affects your mood. They'll say, are you getting enough iron? They know these kinds of things, and they knew it because it worked. They didn't need to know how. Well, so instead of us getting that information from our parents who got it from their parents, this terrible thing happened when humanity was repurposed however many years ago. And instead of the parents teaching what this multi-generational information stream, which would really help you figure out your worldview, you were pulled out of that environment and plugged into the system. Instead, you were actually extracted from your family history and plugged in. This. And think about how diabolical this is. Thank you for that word. It's going to come up quite a bit in what I research. You didn't used to have to think about your retirement because when you couldn't fend for yourself, your parents took care of you. And then when you got older and you couldn't fend for yourself, your children take care of you. And that's how mankind has done this for thousands of years, right? And now we've got this new version where everybody's so busy trying to afford 3 cars and a 3,000 square foot home and whatever, keep up with the Joneses. We know about that, social engineering, if you've ever remember that whole thing. So you're way living outside of your means, and you've got to make all this money, but everybody's got to work. So the kids are in school and the parents are in the nursing home. And so instead of the parents contribute, and this is what, it might be, I've never thought this, but it might be the actual causation of Alzheimer's. I'm sure there's something chemical, some terrible thing that they're feeding us or you're not getting diet-wise. But the fact that the grandparents aren't with their children and their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, sharing their life wisdom, their life information, and imparting on them the things that they've learned. And you get to know your ancestors because they're in the house with you and they don't have to worry about some CNA abusing them or whatever terrible things going on. This is how mankind has done it. And then when you die, you're surrounded in this house, in this comfortable house that you potentially built, right? Maybe you built or you added to or whatever. And you've got all these people that love you, and they're going to be sad that you're going. And you sit there and you go, well, I did a good job, ideally, and I was good to my children, and they're sad. And I've got 30 of them total now with all the and they're all sad to see me go. And as you die, I guarantee you that's going to be a lot nicer death, your last breath, seeing these people saddened by you leaving them, than dying by yourself in some nursing home, which now is 10 times worse because you can't even see them because of COVID. It's a total tragedy what's going on. And back to the Men in Black thing.
Right.
We have been, our connection to our ancestors and the human ancestor, the human experience, has been intentionally wiped out of us, and we at a young age are plopped in the system. And then now, since we have no prehistory, they write the history, and we have no idea what's going on. They tell you what's going on. They tell you up, they can tell you up is down, they can tell you whatever, because you've literally exchanged that connection you're supposed to have with your parents for the state. That's why it's this nanny state. And now these people that are, trying to get you fired because you're a threat to them, these people are defending their parents, the state. It's tragic, dude. I mean, I'm really depressed myself talking about it.
Yeah, you're spot on. And it really is a sad state of affairs when there is, and you use the word narrative, and that's what it is. They're reconstructing the human narrative to suit their own political and power ends. Right. And, by controlling the textbook manufacturers and by controlling the narrative at schools and what's on the walls and the hallways at schools and what content is being taught, not just in the more subjective classes like social studies and language arts, but even in math, where problems are configured in certain ways that it advances the political narrative that, suits the people who are in control of things. And going back to where this began, with the idea that the education establishment is coming after people who are trying to teach their kids privately at homeschool or pods or whatever, they'll do this in a super well-meaning way. They'll say, we want all kids to be able to advance at the same rate. So we're going to, even if you're homeschooling kids, we are going to require that you give them the state test so that we know that they're making a year's progress in a year's time, so that we know that you're not underserving them, and that we know that they're making the appropriate academic benchmarks, so that if we need to return them to schools, even for a little bit, we can do that to get enrichment or to get remedial education, and so that's one of the, again, diabolical ways that the educrats will weasel their way into homeschools and to more private school settings.
The white systemic racism thing, right?
Thank you.
What if I told you it was true? And me as a conspiracy theorist, I don't believe that from a situation that the white person is the enemy. But these people that we're talking about, the potential Rockefellers, the magnates that create the J.P. Morgans, the whatever big Rothschilds, whatever big name people you want to talk about, Oppenheimer, Schwab, like all these people are all actually white. So here's the thing. What if in a double speak way, the reason why it resonates is in one level, we are actually under a systemic control that stems from these white guys that not standard white guys, but what if it's actually white guys at the very top? And so the reason why people are tuning into this, and when you said that thing about they're suffering from this even though they haven't, I was thinking about epigenetics. What if we as a consciousness actually are under a level of servitude to an elite group of white individuals, but it would be all of us, and they're using this, it's like a psyop to get us to go, critical thinking people to go, dude, race theory doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can't think that particularly. But if at some deep beta root level, there is some truth to that, the people that are the oppressors are white. Now, they're not us. That's where it becomes repurposed. Like, I'm white, even though I'm not actually white. And you're white, even though I don't know what they would consider. I really, whatever. I don't want to say like 2021, but yeah. But so they're the actual bad guys.
Classify
and they
people,
go, hey, you're being oppressed by white guys. And then they deflect it to, it's like it's the people around you, but there is like an inherent truth. Yeah. It's those white guys. Exactly. Which is what they did with the Protocols of Zion book.
It's those white guys.
And that's what I got banned on YouTube for. I said that's what's going on right now after the Capitol siege.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I said we have to be careful, because when you start saying a people group is the problem and they need to be put in re-education camps, you're running into Nazi Germany, and we don't want to have that happen. And I got banned on YouTube, of course, because that's what and I had to change my direction or whatever. But that idea with the Protocols of Zion was, they said there's a group of people that's controlling the world, media, banking, whatever. They do it this certain way, and it's the Jews. Go get them, right? But it wasn't the Jewish people doing it. It was the same group that I'm talking about. This is me as a conspiracy theorist, whoever this 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 really important people are that I think are behind, a lot of this education, a lot of even the religious dissonance, all this kind of stuff. And so what they're doing is they're using that same tactic, which is there's truth to it, and you understand there's a little bit of truth to it. But like you said, it's that guy. Go get him. Yeah. And the archetype is actually them.
Yeah. They're selling an archetype.
What a false flag attack that is. The archetype is genius, right? Diabolical.
And it's genius.
It is.
Diabolical genius. Right. Yeah. It's exactly. Like the criminal mastermind of all time.
Not to turn this into like a religious discussion.
By the way, what's that person's name?
If you're a conspiracy theorist and you don't see that this is being done by not just a group of really smart people, it's the entity driving this thing is multi-generational. It's been doing it for hundreds of years, and it's outside of standard human intellect. And then what would happen is that you would buy in, you would go, I'm a dynamic person, I've got the potential to really influence people, whatever. And so they court you and they go, hey, we want you in our group. And you go, well, I'll go to your little party, whatever. And then they test your limits and see how far you're willing to go. And when they determine that you are actually the kind of person they want to put in charge, they have you do terrible, terrible things. This is part of the vetting process, usually sexually, unfortunately, against people's will, whatever. Then they have incriminating evidence against you to make sure you don't turn coat. And they've also shown that you are willing to do whatever and you lack normal human empathy.
Right.
And then it would be my guess that after you go through this vetting process, then you find out who you actually work for. And it's an entity outside of time and space, and it's diabolical and brilliant and is totally winning this information war, unfortunately. All right, everybody, I'm back here with Teach. It's been so long since I've been in school that to have someone that I can call Teach out of respect, that I can talk with, that has the right intention for a child and has the right framework for what he's trying to do is really nice. So I think I'm just going to have to call you Teach from now on, because you're the one teacher in my life that I can talk to. We wanted to discuss, I had written in the show doc, what is the purpose of school? And I think that we came out with what the agenda is, or what the establishment makes the purpose. But what should it be, in your opinion? What can school be? What should it be?
That's a great question, and thank you so much for presenting it. So I think in my utopia, school would be a place where we can teach kids to be the best version of themselves, to teach people to be the best versions of themselves. We teach them thinking skills. We teach them the mechanical things that they need to do to be fully functioning citizens and members of our society. We teach them the practical skills that they need to do to be fully functioning members of society. And then, we let them, through their choices, self-select things that move them along a path that is inspirational to them and that brings their best self to the fore. Rather than saying, we have this dogma that we are going to force you to learn and regurgitate. Rather, I think it's, here are a bazillion different ideas. Let's have you sample some of these in various ways, and then naturally let you gravitate toward those ideas that you are either really good at and you thrive with, or that resonate with you for some reason or another. I think that that's really the potential of school. And in order to teach them how to think, you need to give them something to think about, right? They need to have content to consider, right? And so, you give them experiences and you teach them. So, for example, we talked about the scientific method earlier. So let's get them out and do different scientific experiments that support the idea of the scientific method, right? Let's let them, explore a meter of soil and see what's, in a meter of soil. Let's have them plant different things in that meter of soil to see what grows well and what doesn't grow well.
Unbelievable to me that I didn't grow a single thing in school. My wife's doing it now. She's like, she gets the soil ready and she puts the seeds in and she grows something. And I'm like, I just don't know how to do that. And that's unforgivable. Like, it is magic.
Yeah, it's magic,
it actually is magic. I mean, in the definition of we're not sure how it works. Like, we can say what's happening, but it is absolutely magic. Yeah, it is observable.
It's observable.
And it's
observable.
So it's beautiful. It can be observable and it can be magic. And we can go that when you're showing a kid something to be excited about, how many botanists would come from that? How many people just watching this thing happen would get really excited about it? But instead it's, they're teaching you this or teaching you this, that idea of hands-on schooling. My wife has researched unschooling. Have you researched unschooling?
Right. Oh, I absolutely 100%. I'm a
really,
big
because
fan.
that's what we want to do. Because I don't want to just teach him the standard narrative from home. Like I'm going to be really faced with some tough decisions here. He's 6. We've done our best to protect him through that age of 7, through any kind of trauma, not trying to influence him. I don't actually even teach him to believe in God. We read the Bible and we let him think critically about it. We're not dogmatic about it. I'll say things like, well, I believe this or that. And one day he looked at the moon and he goes, Dad, the moon is really... what do you think it is? And I said, what do you think it is? And he goes, I don't know. It looks like a light. And I said, oh, that's cool. And how do you think it got there? And he goes, something had to make that, like Legos, something probably made that. And I said, yeah, that would be my guess too. But so like that, I don't want to indoctrinate him. If I indoctrinate him, there's no chance he sticks with the faith. He's going to get mad and rebel and leave when he gets older. So I don't want to do that disservice to him. So I want to, ideally lead by example to everybody. It doesn't matter. He's going to be 7. He's going to have to be in some sort of organized thing. I mean, for whatever reason, we've agreed that the state has some say on what we can do and they can like come get your kid or whatever. I have to play ball on some level, but my wife wants to unschool. What are you, like you said, you're a fan of it. Do you like a structured way to be able to do it? Why don't you teach online unschooling?
Financial purposes specifically. I have a daughter in college and that's really expensive. But
Get her out.
Fortunately, she's a really good independent thinker. And let me just flavor this with a little personal story. So my daughter, to give you an idea of how her brain works, she is pursuing a BFA in acting and a minor in applied math.
Cool.
Okay. And so, so she's really good at a lot of things. And so she took what she thought was going to be a throwaway class this term in anthropology and found out that she loves it.
Yeah.
And to the extent that she is particularly interested in primatology and has signed up for an internship for next summer to go study primates in Costa Rica, with this professor. And I just love that level of discovery like your son had. Like, wow, this information was exposed to me in a non-coercive way. And it really piqued my interest. And I find it hugely fascinating. And I want to pursue it until I run through the end of this thread. And I don't know where the end of that thread will be. And I think that is a real purity of what school should
hope.
be.
Anthropology, we need the right kind of anthropologists. That's a very skewed field, in my opinion. And if we could get some agents on the inside there and kind of turn it over from the inside, that would be amazing. Do you mind me asking what her worldview is? Is she evolution, design, anti-design? Or let's not talk about it. I don't want to pigeonhole her.
No. Fair question. No. The truth is, I suspect she's intelligent design, but I've never had an in-depth conversation with her about it. Because she is a member of the dramatic community. Okay. I know that influences a lot of her worldview because that's who her friend group is.
Interesting.
But
I don't see
you
that
know,
as a very pro ID, kind of group. But what's great,
no, it's not.
you're her dad, and you can be her mentor in this, and you've obviously helped train her and how she should be thinking. And that's the wrong way to say it. You've helped her think in the right way. Maybe I don't know. That's a better way to say it. But you have to encourage her as she starts to pursue this in higher learning, that they're going to
Right.
dogmatically, just like we talked about, they're going to try and indoctrinate her to interpret the data to fit their worldview. And if she can actually think critically and go in and look at that, she might be able to really change some things. So yeah, sorry.
And that's where one of the real tensions is in education is, and I see this a lot in high school with older kids in high school and college, because younger kids tend to do what the teachers want them to do a lot more. And there are really bright kids in high school and college who will structure their academic work to get the grade and not to express their actual worldview.
Yeah, that's tragic.
And so they're compromising their beliefs for the grade. It's hugely tragic. And these are conversations, back channel conversations that I have with my older students and with my former students all the time. It's like, I know if you read this paper, Mr. Reyes, you're going to think I'm a tool, but, I had to write this because I need the grade. And I know what their political perspective is because they've let the rest of the class gang up on me 50 times in our debates in class. And I need to write what they want me to write.
And they're throwing stones too, guaranteed. The teacher was right in the middle of it.
Oh, they are, 100%. Or, and even if the teacher is smart enough or has enough self-preservation skills, let me put it that way, has enough self-preservation skills not to enter the fray directly, the fact that they would allow it and facilitate it is enough.
I would be surprised if they felt like they were in any kind of danger for not jumping in and throwing, intellectual stones at an intelligent design person. I think that it's fair. Like earlier we were talking about inclusion, and I mentioned the white male Christian. Well, I can tell you this. It's totally socially acceptable to laugh in a classroom at somebody who says they believe that Jesus Christ resurrected from the dead. I watched
100%
Sam Harris make Jordan Peterson borderline denounce his faith and say in front of a group of 1,000 people in a lecture or in a debate that he doesn't believe Jesus rose from the dead. And he was laughing and everybody was laughing, and Jordan Peterson was going, you know what? I don't want to say that. I don't know what the science says. And then he even said something like, I never said I believed that. And like, Jordan Peterson, who's like an amazing guy, right? And he made that concession because of, are you familiar with the Ash Conformity Experiment?
No, I don't think so.
You should write that down. The Ash, ASCH Conformity Experiment. It'll probably just be warned that you're going to be pissed off. And you're going to see how much of that influences this. The idea is getting people to do things against their will because the majority's doing it. It's kind of like
yes, I do know that now. Yes.
You're thinking of the Milgram, the Stanley
Milgram. No, not Milgram. Yeah, I'm familiar with Ash now that you bring that up.
So Milgram's more extreme, but this is like the elementary version of it. So that happened against Jordan Peterson. So if you're a guy who, you don't want to be ostracized, you're the new kid, you're the freshman in school, and you believed in the Genesis account, and everybody's basically saying that you are too stupid to understand actual science, and you believe this bigoted, non-inclusive religion, and you were the enemy, and you would have to be a very strong believer to be able to weather that storm, and that is a tragedy. 100%. And it is why, think about this rite of passage. Hopefully I can do this in 5 minutes or 3 minutes. I'll try and make it quick. We take after indoctrinating them in elementary school, let's say that they're able to, keep their faith with them. And now they're 16, 18 years old and they go to college. They go from the small town where the mom and dad really try to teach them, practical Christianity, not some fanatical thing in this thought experiment I'm thinking, but, practical, rest on Saturdays, be good, don't lie, there's one God kind of thing. Send them to school. And now as this rite of passage that we have to go through to show yourself as a, hireable employee asset, you are introduced to very liberal thinking, obviously in college, high, promiscuity, partying, all of these kinds of things. And so in the extracurricular, you're like, do I be faithful to God? Do I be faithful to my boyfriend? Do I not drink? Do I kind of like, what do I want to party or not party? I felt I dealt with that kind of temptation. We all do. So then they go to school in the day and they go to their psychology class. And when I first heard this, I couldn't believe it, but I've confirmed it multiple times. A lot of psychology professors will start off the class by saying, they'll do a roll call and they say, how many people in this room are Christians? And 4 people raise their hands. And he'll say, if I do my job, there won't be a single Christian remaining. I'll do a roll call at the end of my class.
Wow.
Multiple people have told me about this event. Then they go to the biology class. Oh, you believe in Adam, don't you? You don't believe, blah, blah, blah. So you're bullied intellectually, academically, this whole thing. And, if you suffer that experience and you come out a God-fearing Christian who believes in the authenticity of the Bible, it's borderline a miracle. And what's so hard for me is that as a society, we accept this rite of passage and we agree to put our children through it. And for what? Because at the end of it, they have a degree and now they're actually prepared to work. No, all it really is showing you that you have a stick-to-itiveness to be able to see something like this through, that you're hireable asset in the fact that you're not just some guy that's going to walk away. You can see something through. You're capable of organizing your life. One of the things I would love to accomplish on this platform is to delegitimize a little bit the idea of needing a degree to be a good employee. Because if the
100%.
If the colleges aren't going to change and this mindset isn't going to change, then we as business owners need to stand up and say, I literally wouldn't hire someone if they had a degree right now. If they came to me and they said, I want to work for your, and that's extreme, whatever, I'm extreme, you're understanding how manic I am. But if they came to me and they said, Mr. Voice of Reasons, I want to be your internet social media person or whatever. And I would say, do you have a degree? And they would say yes. And I would say, you're not my kind of person. And that's not inclusive, I know, but
right.
You believe the official narrative, you this and this, and I would actually hire them. I'm just saying that I would that's where I would want to be. And I don't think that I think that we need to, as hiring class managers, I think we need to get rid of that necessary degree to be able to be considered for your parks and management administration job or whatever, right? Like you have a degree in this. Now, it's not going to go away, unfortunately, but I would love to see it go away. And you know who's with me on this is Elon Musk.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me and Elon were like this. Just kidding. But we see eye to eye on college being a ruse and unnecessary. I mean, that guy, I bet he's an ENTP. I'd want to look into that. He's probably smarter than that. He's probably some other, like a thinking version of us, like whatever, doesn't matter. But he's breaking the norm. It's like, we can't go to space. He's like, yeah, we can, watch. I'll do this. Like he's the guy that I'm talking about, like that they're going to teach about the things that he's done. He stood up against the establishment. And I love that he's doing that. So he's saying that college isn't as important. And I love that. And you know what else he's saying is that we could potentially be in a simulation. And we didn't get to that. And I know that's almost a heretical thing, but if we're in a simulation, it's clearly intelligently designed, right?
Has to be.
Hey, yeah, simulations don't pop out of nothing. So that's why
right. I mean, as a teacher, I've taught the idea of game design, and there are several principles that have to go into game design. And, you have an environment, you have rules, you have all of these elements that make a game make sense.
Yeah. And so what's great about that, where if we are an intelligently designed system, I would just say that God of the Bible created it. And I actually made a documentary called The Operating System, where I dealt with the idea that the Torah, it's this idea that I have that's kind of out there, but that the operating system that creates its reality is the Torah. So, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and everything that was made by the Word. It says right there, it was made by the Word. And software coding is a, alphanumeric code. And it's just an idea. But actually, when I started researching it, Kabbalist Jews have taught this for a long time, that our reality is a programmed reality, which is a small subset of a bigger reality. So it doesn't matter if it's digital or not. I'm not going to run around and try and start the church of the simulation, but it takes Elon going out there going, yeah, everything is potentially wrong. We might be in a video game. That's the kind of thinker I want to be around. You know what I mean? And he might figure that out. He might figure out that we're in a simulation. He might have already figured it out. The guy says the chances that we're not in a simulation are like 1 in billions. And this guy has built the technology to fly off the planet. So he knows more than your standard biology teacher, and he might be onto something. So let's break the norm. Let's protect our children. I'll finish on, I wanted you to give me a action item thing. Let's protect our children. We're their parents. We are their parents. We can be their educators. We are their protectors.
Right.
What do we do, Teach?
if there is any kind of silver lining to the tragedy that has been the last year or 14 months, it is the awakening of so many people's minds, parents particularly, that the institutional school system is surplus, right? That we as parents and as community members have absolutely the ability and the now technological platforms to pull our kids from those institutions, from away from those indoctrination centers, which is essentially what they are and what they're becoming more of, and teach the kids the values and the skills and the things that we and they want to become productive citizens as they move forward in their lives. I think that the future of school ought to be more a la carte, right? I can't do lab science at my house necessarily. And, there are tools that exist in the public schools that normal people might not be able to afford or be able to access. And if the kid just went to public schools because they wanted to learn how to do 3D printing and how to write code on computers that their families can't access for one reason or another, that's a great function of public schools. Teach them that, right? So if parents, and also I'm a big advocate, as I've said many times on my TikTok, that the money should follow the kid and not go to the institution. So to the degree to which the kids access the public school system, that is the degree to which the public school system should be compensated by the state, right? So if my kid goes to school 40%, then give the state 40% of the money that they would have given to that is allocated for each student, and then let the family have the balance of that to fulfill their education in whatever ways that they want to. I think that is, and I think that if anything good comes out of COVID, that will be a direction that our country and our society takes that will make it a better and stronger place.
I like your optimism. I wish I could get on board with you that that's where we're going. I agree that it's the silver lining is that for at least some amount of time, the children were actually in the house with the parents, and the parents were actually acting like parents. So I agree with that. I just think that, and this is me being fatalistic, but I just think that this cat is out of the bag. I don't think we got here by accident, and I don't think they're going to relinquish it. And I think that in order to really have a captive citizenry, you have to get them young. And I don't think they're just what's that line? The education establishment fears you might teach your kids unapproved ideas. They're not going to let your kid, you do that. And I mean, I'm amazed that homeschooling is an option. When we get off the phone or this call, I'd like to talk to you about that a little bit, but I don't think it's going to go away. Unfortunately, I will say though, as you were talking, I was thinking about how great this is, and I'll be the president, and I'll appoint you my director of education. Super easy plan there. Yeah, I think that'll work out. So, but I would love to have you, running the entire education system. And I was thinking about how if we actually started over Men in Black style, and amnesia, everybody starts over, and we start these little pod groups. Because of the human condition and because of what I see as Luciferian influence behind the, normally neutral human condition, what would happen is these little cells would start to become more organized, and then they would get bigger, and then you'd have a corporate entity on top of them. And then next thing you know, we'd be in the same exact boat, because it's just the playing out of what humans do and what humans that, are in opposition to God's system do. So what I think also what we can do, I'd love to salvage this administrationally and corporately, but I think it's really about at the individual level doing what you can do as a parent to, prepare your kid to deal with this attack that they're going to be under, because I just don't see us fixing it administratively. But what you said is brilliant. And you know what I would like? You said the 3D printer guy. Well, the 3D printer guy doesn't necessarily particularly have to learn Romeo and Juliet very well, right? Or whatever the example would be, or maybe he struggles with adverbs and adjectives. I'm dyslexic, so reading comprehension wasn't great for me. And then when I got older and we started getting audio on books, I absorbed so many books because I could hear it instead of trying to fuddle through reading it, right? So that idea is so great. What is this kid interested in? Let's really help him. Like you said, the public school thing with access to that is amazing. And And I think a big part of it would be really cool is the Myers-Briggs. I don't know if they're effective at 8 or 10 years old. It might be later in life.
Yeah, I sort my middle schoolers using them.
You do?
Yeah.
You're the guy. You're the guy.
Yeah, and it really is remarkable. It's super fun. The kids are skeptical at first.
Yeah.
But then once they do the test, and then I put them in various groups organized by Myers-Briggs, they totally see it. So if I put a group of kids, a group of ENTPs into a group, they get jack done, right? Because they're all just talking at the same time.
So you put an ENTP with ISTJ or whatever it is.
Yeah. If I want to if I really am serious about their accomplishing things, I will mix the groups up. But initially, I will structure them so they can watch each other self-destruct.
Oh, that's so good. It's so important. I love that you're doing that. When I did my first Myers-Briggs test 10, 12 years ago, I went, that's the future of employment and education. That's how you do it. This is why, like, let me sit here and research this stuff. Obviously, I've done a lot of research to put all this together. Let me do this on my own time and I will flourish. I will do my thing. Put me in a class and try and get me read one textbook about the thing that no chance. It's totally not going to work. So this idea of taking a child and their potential and really harvesting their potential, and the Myers-Briggs thing is so awesome. With the city of Denver that I used to work for, I was there 2001 till last year, and I knew about Myers-Briggs and I kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and I helped us get a version of it in for our training. It was the DISC assessment.
The DISC assessment, yeah.
Which is good. It's different. It's more occupational based. But I was explaining because my boss was a logistician, and him and I'm an idea guy. And so we ended up forging a really good relationship, but it had the potential of always being contentious because of how different and disparate our ideas were. So when we did the test, you find out that the D and the I are the two most likely to butt heads. And so we were able to see that and go, hey, this is where you're good. This is where I'm good. We have to be careful when we do this, but I'm better doing my thing and you're better doing your thing. And together we make a complete product, right? So that's what you would want to do if you actually wanted people that were happy and people that were healthy and that were thriving. This is what you would do. You and I figured this out, and they're not figuring it out. It's not an accident. It's not an accident because they need sick.
No. The tools are out there and they've been out there.
Yeah. And this is why I say I don't think that we can. I'd love to fix it like you're saying, but if you had a group of people, your population were healthy, vibrant, capable, self-sufficient, prepared, critical thinking, dynamic people, you think that we would accept slavery, a version of slavery?
Yeah, I know. That sounds like a threat to the system.
It is a threat to the people who at the very top are making a lot of money from us being sick and dumb and, whatever stuff.
And ignorant.
It's and ignorant.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we went from doctors making you better to whatever's going on now, and teachers, making you smart to whatever it is now. We crossed a pretty bad Rubicon, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I like to conclude by giving a book recommendation often. So jot this down.
Okay.
There are two authors, Strauss, Strauss, and Howe, Howe, and two books that they've written that I think will resonate with what a lot of your thinking is. One of them is called The Fourth Turning. Another one is called Generations. And what you will see echoes what you've said about how a lot of the cycles that we see going on in the world go back over centuries.
Yeah. And
how it is completely predictable.
Yep. It's predictable. It's manipulatable. And the people that have known this for a long time. I'll let you also conclude. I didn't want to try and conclude over your conclusion, but in ancient Egypt, the ruling class of Egypt didn't believe that Ra was the sun god. They believed that their god lived in the belt of Orion and Sirius and the dog star. I don't know. It was really occult stuff. But what they did is they taught one version of reality to the working class to get them to do the things that they wanted them to do, which at that point was like, if you don't listen to us, then the sun's going to be pissed, and then there would be a solar eclipse, because they knew about the they knew about
the astronomy.
Yep. So they knew when, the astronomy, they knew when the sun was going to eclipse. So they would say, we're warning you, we're warning you, we're warning you. And then they wouldn't get the tax money or whatever. And they would say,
look what you've done.
Exactly.
You've offended the gods.
And it's what was needed to be taught to them to keep them as slaves, or to keep them in the working, like the oppressed working class. And meanwhile, they believed something different. And this group of people that we're talking about, or that I'm talking about, I want to bring you into that, but they're teaching evolution, but they don't. I'm 100% confident that they don't, and I'm not saying the professors, I'm talking about the people who tell the professors what to teach. They don't believe that. And I just concluded watching a 2-hour lecture about quantum field theory, and the theoretical physicist, or quantum physicist, I'm not sure what she is, or maybe both. He said, I almost wanted to pull it up. He said, we teach one thing to the children, and to even up to what did we say? The first level of college, whatever that would be, pre-grad or something. I didn't go to college, so I don't know what it is. But we teach them one truth, and it's a white lie, because we don't think that they know what they couldn't handle what the actual truth is. And then when you get to this postdoctorate or whatever, you get to learn the real truth, and it's about quantum field theory and quarks and whatever, neutrinos. But the guy said it in this, he said, we lie to the kids and we tell them this one thing. And I was so blown away that he would even say that out loud. But I think that's what's going on. And I think, as parents, if we can understand that they're either potentially intentionally or out of ignorance lying to our children, and not just blindly trust them, and we can equip them, if we are going to put them in school, to be able to fight this information war, to be able to hold on to the truth, teach, help them to know how to think and stuff. I think that's probably your best chance, because I don't think we're going to be able to change the administration. And you worked on changing the administration, and they voted you off the island.
Yep, literally, because I lived on an island.
Yeah,
totally, literally.
Wow. Well, I want to have you on again.
Thank you. Love to come back.
Yeah, I will continue to always talk too much, and I'm sorry. I repent. But I would want you to make some notes, and see if there's something that you would want to talk about next time. And
sure.
Is there any other concluding thoughts you'd want to get to before we hang up?
No, I think that we've gone a whole bunch of different directions, all of them super interesting and worth even further discussion. But thank you for having me, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, thank you for not only being here, but for being who you are and doing what you do. We need you out there. So if we don't talk for whatever reason, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.